My name is Emma, and at 29 years old, I had built something extraordinary that my family knew nothing about. When I decided to visit home for my 30th birthday, I expected maybe a small dinner, perhaps a homemade cake from my mother's kitchen. Instead, my parents looked at me across our familiar wooden dining table and delivered news that felt like a punch to the gut. We had to cancel your birthday celebration. We need every penny for Rachel's wedding expenses. The old familiar ache of being second choice returned with full force, but they had no idea who I had become or what my life looked like now. 2 days later, as we sat around that same table, picking at leftover takeout, my phone rang with a call that would change everything. Before I continue, let me know in the comments if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if this story resonates with you. Growing up in Millbrook, a quiet town in upstate New York where everyone knew everyone's business, I was always the responsible daughter in the Sterling family. Our house was a modest colonial with white shutters and a wraparound porch where my mother, Carol, would sit with her morning coffee, watching the neighbors walk their dogs. My father, David, worked as an accountant at the town's biggest firm, a steady job that provided stability but never luxury. Then there was my sister Rachel, 3 years younger than me and the undisputed princess of our household. From the moment she could smile, she had this magnetic charm that drew people to her like moths to a flame. Dance recitals, beauty pageants, cheerleading championships. Rachel collected trophies and crowns the way other kids collected stickers. Our mantelpiece sagged under the weight of her achievements, while my academic awards typically found their way to a shoebox in my closet. Rachel has such natural charisma, my mother would tell her book club friends over tea and cookies. And Emma, well, she's so studious and practical. The subtext was clear. Rachel was blessed with star quality while I was merely hardworking. I was 10 when I brought home my first perfect report card, straight A's across every subject. My father glanced at it briefly and said, "Good job, kiddo," before returning to his evening news. That same night, Rachel, only 7, performed an impromptu dance routine in our living room, earning thunderous applause and promises of ice cream for dessert. This became our family's unspoken rhythm. My achievements were expected, Rachel's were celebrated. The financial disparity was just as pronounced. Private dance lessons, expensive pageant dresses, specialized coaching for competitions. No expense was too great for Rachel's pursuits. When I needed money for academic competitions or wanted to attend a summer engineering camp, I was gently reminded about our family budget and encouraged to find creative solutions. By 15, I was working weekends at the local library, saving every dollar I earned while Rachel received a generous allowance for simply existing. My birthdays became exercises in disappointment. My Sweet 16 was postponed because it conflicted with Rachel's regional dance competition. My 18th was remembered 3 days late with a grocery store cake and a hastily written card. By my 21st, I had learned not to expect anything at all. Rachel wasn't malicious. She was simply accustomed to being the center of attention. She genuinely loved me in her own way, but she had never known what it felt like to be overlooked. Our parents had created a dynamic where her needs naturally took precedence, and questioning it seemed as pointless as arguing with gravity. My father, David, now in his late 50s with graying hair and wire-rimmed glasses, was a quiet man who expressed affection through practical gestures. He would check my car's oil before I drove back to college and slip $20 bills into my textbooks. But his face lit up differently when Rachel entered a room, and suddenly this man of few words would become animated, asking about her day, her dreams, her latest romantic drama. My mother, Carol, with her perpetually busy demeanor and reading, glasses hanging from a chain around her neck, managed our household with military precision. She could recite Rachel's schedule from memory, knew her favorite foods, and kept detailed photo albums of every milestone. Yet she consistently forgot my preferences, buying me clothes in colors I disliked, and planning meals I couldn't eat due to allergies she somehow never remembered. Rachel, now 26 with our mother's auburn hair and our father's confident smile, had sailed through life on a cushion of family support. After college, which our parents paid for entirely, she worked sporadically at various jobs, event planning, social media management, boutique sales, never staying anywhere long, enough to build real expertise. "I'm still finding my passion," she would explain, and our parents would nod understandingly, never mentioning the business degree that had cost them $40,000. When I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in computer science and business, I received a congratulatory text from my family who couldn't attend the ceremony due to Rachel's engagement party. Standing alone after graduation, watching other families celebrate their graduates with flowers and photographs, I made a promise to myself. I would build success so undeniable that even my family would have to acknowledge it. I packed my belongings into my 10-year-old Honda Civic and drove to Boston without looking back. The 4-hour drive felt like crossing into another universe, one where I could define my own worth. My journey began in a cramped studio apartment in Cambridge that cost more per month than my parents' mortgage payment. Armed with my degree and an unshakable determination to prove myself, I landed an entry-level position at a mid-sized software company. While my colleagues enjoyed Boston's vibrant nightlife, I worked 16-hour days, volunteered for impossible projects, and spent weekends mastering new programming languages. During those early years, I maintained regular contact with my family through our Sunday phone calls. These conversations followed a predictable script: detailed updates about Rachel's latest boyfriend, job changes, or social activities, followed by perfunctory questions about my little computer job. I never corrected their assumption that I was just another cog in the corporate machine. Something deep inside me wanted to earn their recognition through undeniable success, not through explanations or self-promotion. Within 18 months, I was promoted to senior developer. By my 3rd year, I was leading the company's most profitable project, but the corporate environment felt constraining for my ambitions. I had ideas that could revolutionize small business operations, concepts my superiors deemed too risky to pursue. So at 25, I made the leap that would define my future. I withdrew my modest savings, secured a small business loan, and founded Phoenix Solutions. My vision was to create cloud-based management software that would level the playing field for small businesses, giving mom-and-pop operations the same technological advantages as major corporations. Those first months tested every limit of my endurance. I survived on ramen noodles and determination, sleeping on an air mattress in our tiny office space. The breakthrough came 14 months later, when our inventory management system caught the attention of a prominent venture capital firm. Our pilot program with 20 local businesses showed remarkable results. Inventory costs dropped by 25%, customer satisfaction improved, and profit margins increased across the board. The investment offer was life-changing: $8 million for a 30% stake in Phoenix Solutions. That single handshake transformed everything. I moved from my cramped apartment to a luxury condo overlooking Boston Harbor. Our company relocated to a gleaming office tower in the financial district, complete with modern amenities and a team of brilliant minds I had recruited from top universities. The most valuable addition to my life, however, was Marcus, the executive assistant I hired to manage my increasingly complex schedule. Marcus, with his impeccable organizational skills and diplomatic demeanor, quickly became indispensable. More than just an assistant, he became my closest confidant and the only person who truly understood the complexity of my relationship with my family. "Your parents have no idea you're a multi-millionaire CEO," he said incredulously after overhearing one of my routine Sunday calls with my mother. I shrugged, a gesture that had become automatic when discussing my family. "They think I work at some office doing computer stuff. I've never felt the need to elaborate." Marcus shook his head in disbelief. "That bonus you sent them last Christmas was more than most people earn in 6 months. What did you tell them it was for?" "Company holiday gift for employees' families," I replied matter-of-factly. They never asked for details. The truth was that my parents had never shown curiosity about my professional life beyond confirming that I was employed and financially stable. In our brief phone conversations, they seemed satisfied with vague responses about work being busy but good, before eagerly shifting the conversation to Rachel's latest adventures or relationship updates. Phoenix Solutions' success became increasingly difficult to keep secret. Last year, we were featured in Inkier magazine's 40 Under 40 list. Our software now served over 2,000 businesses across North America, and we had just signed a partnership deal with a major retail chain that would bring our technology to their 1,500 franchise locations. The professional recognition brought a complex mixture of pride and loneliness. I had achieved everything I had set out to accomplish, but the personal validation I craved from my family remained as elusive as ever. This was largely my own doing. I had never given them the opportunity to celebrate my success because I had never shared it with them. As my 30th birthday approached, I found myself staring at the framed photo on my desk, the only family picture I displayed in my office. It showed all four of us at Rachel's college graduation, smiling under a bright spring sky. Despite everything, they were still my family, and I found myself longing for connection. On impulse, I called my mother and announced my intention to come home for my birthday weekend. Her surprise was evident, but she quickly recovered with characteristic efficiency. "Of course, sweetheart. We'd love to see you. It's been too long." I asked Marcus to clear my calendar, declining his offer to arrange a private car service. "I'm driving," I insisted, feeling a need to make the journey in a way that connected me to my past. "Just a normal family visit." Marcus looked skeptical, but nodded. "Should I have any of your birthday gifts shipped to your parents' house?" He gestured toward the pile of expensive presents from business associates and employees. I laughed at the mental image of luxury items arriving at my childhood home. "Definitely not. As far as they know, I'm just an ordinary office worker who can barely afford her Boston rent." As I packed a weekend bag, deliberately choosing simple clothes instead of my usual designer wardrobe, I wondered if I was making a mistake. Part of me wanted to arrive home in obvious success, forcing my family to acknowledge what I had achieved. But a wiser part understood that genuine reconnection couldn't be built on resentment or vindication. The drive from Boston to Millbrook gave me 4 hours to rehearse various scenarios in my mind. Would my parents notice the subtle changes that success had brought? The confident way I carried myself now? The absence of financial stress that had once lined my face? Would Rachel and I finally connect as adults? I had deliberately rented a modest sedan rather than driving my Tesla, wanting to ease into any revelations rather than announcing them through material displays. Millbrook looked smaller than I remembered, like a childhood toy viewed through adult eyes. Main Street still featured Henderson's Hardware, Murphy's Diner, and the corner bookstore. But chain stores had filled in the gaps between familiar establishments. I drove past my old high school, past the library where I had worked weekends, and finally turned onto Elm Street where my childhood home waited, looking exactly the same yet somehow diminished. My mother opened the front door before I could knock, her face lighting up with a smile that made me question all my accumulated resentments. "Emma!" she exclaimed, pulling me into a hug that smelled of her familiar vanilla perfume. "Let me look at you." She held me at arm's length, her eyes scanning me with maternal assessment. "City life suits you beautifully." My father appeared behind her, his tall frame slightly stooped now, his hair more silver than I remembered. "There's my girl," he said, giving me his characteristic awkward side hug. He had changed from his weekend clothes into a pressed shirt, his version of dressing up for my visit. The house remained frozen in time. The same floral couch dominated the living room, the same landscape paintings hung on cream-colored walls, and the same family photos covered the mantelpiece, though Rachel's achievements continued to claim the most prominent positions. The only new addition was a large bulletin board covered with wedding magazines, fabric samples, and venue brochures, a shrine to Rachel's upcoming nuptials. "Rachel should be here any minute," my mother said, ushering me toward the kitchen where something delicious simmered on the stove. "She just finished her yoga class. She teaches 3 sessions a week now at that new studio downtown." I helped my mother prepare dinner, falling into our familiar rhythm of her directing while I assisted. As I chopped vegetables, she provided detailed updates about neighborhood gossip, church activities, and Rachel's wedding preparations. "The venue costs are astronomical these days," she said, shaking her head. "But you only get married once, and Rachel has her heart set on the Riverside Country Club. It's where the mayor's daughter got married last spring." My father sat at the kitchen table reading his newspaper but occasionally glancing up at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. "How's the computer job?" he finally asked during a lull in my mother's commentary. "It's going well," I replied with my standard response. "Busy but good." "Making decent money?" he pressed, surprising me with his directness. Before I could formulate an answer, the front door burst open and Rachel's voice filled the house. "I'm home! Where's the birthday girl?" Rachel swept into the kitchen like a hurricane of energy and blonde hair. At 26, she looked like she had stepped out of a fitness magazine, her yoga instructor lifestyle evident in her toned physique and glowing skin. She wore expensive athleisure wear that probably cost more than most people spent on a week's groceries. Emma, she squealed, embracing me with genuine enthusiasm. You look absolutely amazing. Boston must have some serious magic. Dinner was a lively affair dominated by Rachel's animated descriptions of her yoga classes, her recent wellness retreat in Costa Rica, and most importantly, her upcoming wedding to Derek, a successful real estate agent she had met 8 months ago. I've been manifesting this wedding for years, she explained, her eyes bright with excitement. October at Riverside Country Club, 200 guests, and a honeymoon in Bali. It's going to be absolutely perfect. Rachel has been planning every detail, my mother added, though her glance at my father suggested underlying financial stress. The dress alone is a work of art. Well, you know what they say about wedding expenses, Rachel said with a laugh. You can't put a price on the most important day of your life. Mom and Dad have been incredible, covering most of the major costs. My father cleared his throat, a sound I recognized as his prelude to difficult conversations. Speaking of expenses, he said, his eyes not quite meeting mine. Emma, your mother and I need to discuss something with you about your birthday celebration. My mother reached across the table to pat my hand, her expression apologetic but matter-of-fact. We had originally planned a lovely dinner at Antonelli's for tomorrow night. We made the reservation weeks ago. Antonelli's was the finest restaurant in Millbrook, where we had celebrated Rachel's engagement 6 months earlier. My heart warmed at the thought that they had planned something special. But we've had to cancel the reservation, my mother continued. We need to redirect that money toward the wedding expenses. The catering costs came in higher than expected, and we're already stretched thin. The warmth drained from my chest, replaced by a familiar cold disappointment. I see, I managed to say, keeping my voice steady. We thought we could do something simpler instead, my father added quickly. Maybe order pizza tomorrow night and have cake at home. Rachel at least had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. I told them we could postpone some of the wedding expenses, but Mom and Dad insisted. They said the wedding only happens once, but birthdays come every year. My mother nodded emphatically. Exactly. You understand, don't you, Emma? You have your stable career, but this wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. These deposits can't be recovered, and the vendors require payment schedules. I looked around the table at their expectant faces, my mother's practical concern, my father's obvious discomfort, Rachel's barely concealed excitement about her wedding plans. After all these years, nothing had fundamentally changed. I was still the reliable daughter expected to understand, to accommodate, to need less. I swallowed the hurt rising in my throat and forced what I hoped was an understanding smile. Of course, I understand. Pizza sounds perfect. Relief visibly washed over my parents' faces. My mother launched into detailed explanations about which pizzeria made the best gluten-free options for Rachel's sensitive digestive system, while my father retreated behind his newspaper. Just like that, my 30th birthday was downgraded and dismissed. I sat quietly, pushing food around my plate, fighting the urge to mention that I could buy the entire country club if I wanted to, let alone pay for a simple birthday dinner. But some stubborn part of me still wanted them to value me without knowing what I had accomplished financially. I wanted them to see Emma, the daughter, not Emma, the successful CEO. As I listened to Rachel detail every aspect of her wedding timeline, from hair and makeup schedules to the specific shade of ivory for her bouquet ribbon, I wondered why I had come home at all. Some naive part of me had hoped things would be different this time, but here I was, 29 years old, accomplished beyond my wildest dreams, and still invisible at my own family's dinner table. The next morning brought no improvement in the family dynamics. My mother had forgotten to buy the coffee I preferred, remembering only that Rachel avoided caffeine after noon. So I walked to the local cafe for my morning necessity, a ritual that felt symbolic of my perpetual role as the family member who handled her own needs. When I returned with coffee and pastries for everyone, the house buzzed with wedding-related activity. My mother was helping Rachel organize fabric samples, while my father researched photography packages online. Every conversation revolved around the upcoming celebration that would cost more than most people's annual salary. Emma, honey, would you mind running to the craft store? my mother asked without looking up from a collection of invitation samples. Rachel needs specific ribbon for her centerpiece prototypes, and I just can't step away from this right now. I agreed, swallowing my disappointment that even on my birthday, I remained primarily useful for errands. As I drove to the craft store, in my rental car, I checked my phone to find dozens of birthday messages from my employees, business partners, and professional contacts. Marcus had sent a photo of an elaborate cake waiting in my office back in Boston, along with a message. "The whole team misses you. Say the word and I'll arrange immediate extraction from family obligations." The contrast between my two worlds had never felt more stark. In Boston, I was valued, respected, even admired. Here in Millbrook, I was just Emma, reliable, understanding. Emma, who could surely be counted on to accommodate everyone else's priorities. That evening, we gathered around the dining table again. My mother had ordered pizza as promised, remembering Rachel's dietary restrictions while forgetting that I had always disliked pepperoni, which covered half the order. My father had bought a small grocery store cake with "Happy Birthday, Emma" written in generic blue frosting. "So, Emma," my father said as we ate, "tell us more about this computer work of yours. Are you still with the same company?" The question offered a perfect opening to finally reveal the truth about my professional success. But something held me back, perhaps the same stubborn pride that had kept me silent for so long. "Still in tech," I said vaguely. "Things are going well." "That's nice, dear," my mother said absently before turning to Rachel. "Now, about your final dress fitting next week." Rachel launched into another detailed account of wedding preparations, complete with discussions about photography timeline and reception music. My parents listened with rapt attention, asking questions and offering suggestions as if she were planning a summit meeting rather than a party. "I'm thinking of hiring a videographer too," Rachel announced. "Derek's cousin is a professional, and he could document the whole day. It would be like our own personal movie." "What a wonderful idea," my mother exclaimed. "You're so creative, Rachel. This wedding is going to be absolutely magical." My father nodded approvingly. Our Rachel, always thinking ahead. I nearly choked on my pizza. I wanted to tell them about the documentary crew that had filmed our company for a business innovation series last month. I wanted to share the 3 industry awards Phoenix Solutions had won this year, or the speaking engagement I had coming up at MIT. Instead, I reached for my water glass and remained silent. "Emma, didn't you help plan some office party once?" my mother asked, her brow furrowed in vague recollection. Before I could answer, my phone rang. The screen displayed "Marcus Urgent," our agreed-upon code for calls I absolutely could not ignore. Under normal circumstances, I would have excused myself to take the call privately, but my mother waved dismissively. "Go ahead and answer, dear. We know your little office probably needs you even on your birthday." Something in her condescending tone made me put the phone on speaker, a decision that would change everything. "Hello, Marcus." "Emma, I apologize for disturbing your family time." Marcus's crisp, professional voice filled the dining room. "But I need to confirm details for Monday's board meeting. The investors from Goldman Sachs want to finalize the acquisition offer before the Tokyo partners arrive Tuesday. Should I tell them you'll take their call at 9 a.m., or would you prefer to meet in person at their Manhattan office?" The silence that followed was absolutely deafening. My father's fork clattered onto his plate. My mother froze with her wine glass halfway to her lips. Rachel's mouth fell open mid-sentence. I stared at my phone, equally shocked. Marcus and I had no acquisition offers pending, and Goldman Sachs had never shown interest in Phoenix Solutions. We had no Tokyo partners scheduled to arrive anywhere. "Marcus," I said carefully, "I think there might be some confusion about my schedule." "Oh no!" Marcus sounded genuinely flustered, very unlike his usual composed demeanor. "I just received the email from their mergers and acquisitions team. They're offering $65 million for complete acquisition, or they're willing to discuss a minority stake if you prefer to maintain control. The Tokyo Group is particularly interested in expanding our software to the Asian markets." 3 pairs of eyes stared at me in stunned silence. I took a deep breath, recognizing that my carefully maintained secret was crumbling in real time. "Please tell them I'll need to review all documentation before making any decisions," I said, trying to maintain my professional composure despite my racing heart. "And Marcus, let's discuss the details tomorrow morning." Of course, Emma. Again, sorry for the interruption. Happy birthday, and congratulations on the acquisition interest. You've built something truly remarkable. As I ended the call, the dining room remained frozen in tableau. My father was the first to break the silence. Acquisition? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. 65 million? I looked at their shocked faces and realized there was no going back. The conversation I had been avoiding for years was finally unavoidable. I've been meaning to tell you all something about my work, I said quietly. What exactly do you do? My father asked, his voice sharper than I had ever heard it. I took a deep breath, knowing this moment would reshape our family dynamic forever. I'm the founder and CEO of Phoenix Solutions. We develop cloud-based management software for small and medium-sized businesses. My mother's forehead creased in confusion. But you told us you worked for a tech company. I do work for a tech company, I said carefully, but I don't work for someone else. I own the company. I built it from scratch 7 years ago. Rachel let out a disbelieving laugh. Wait, you own a company worth $65 million? Actually, that would just be one potential valuation, I clarified. Phoenix Solutions currently serves over 2,000 businesses across North America. We have 85 employees and offices in Boston, Chicago, and Toronto. My father leaned forward, his accounting mind clearly trying to process the financial implications. How many employees did you say? 85 as of last month. We're hiring another 20 before year-end. And you're the boss? My mother said slowly, as if testing the concept. The actual boss of all those people? I nodded, watching realization dawn on their faces like a slow sunrise. My mother's expression shifted from confusion to something more complex, a mixture of pride, embarrassment, and perhaps defensiveness. Why didn't you tell us? She asked, an edge creeping into her voice. When would I have told you? I asked gently. Our phone calls last 15 minutes at most, and they're usually about Rachel's latest achievements. You've never really asked about my work beyond whether I still had a job. My father flinched at this observation, his eyes dropping to the table. But we always ask how work is going, my mother protested. You always say fine or busy. Phoenix Solutions was featured in Inquirer magazine last month, I said, unable to keep a hint of hurt from my voice. Our educational initiative won a National Small Business Innovation Award last year. If you had ever Googled my name, you would have found dozens of articles and interviews. My father looked genuinely stricken. We had no idea, Emma. That's exactly the point, Dad, I said softly. You never thought to look. You never imagined I might be doing anything noteworthy. My mother's chin lifted defensively. That's not fair. We've always been supportive of your career. Have you? I challenged gently. When Rachel decided to become a yoga instructor, you researched certification programs and visited studios. You know the names of her favorite poses and can recite her class schedule. Before tonight, did you know the name of my company? Do you know what our software actually does? My mother opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. Her expression conflicted. Rachel, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. So you're rich now? Is that what this is about? You came home to show off how successful you are compared to the rest of us? Her accusation stung because it contained a grain of truth I didn't want to examine too closely. No, Rachel. I came home hoping to reconnect with my family. I deliberately downplayed my success because I wanted to be valued for who I am, not what I've achieved. But now you're throwing it in our faces, she said, eyes flashing, making us feel terrible about my wedding expenses when apparently you could buy the whole country club. I didn't plan for Marcus to call, I said, keeping my voice level. But yes, it hurts that my 30th birthday was canceled for your wedding costs. It hurts that you all assumed I would understand and accept it without question, just like I always have. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. Emma, we never meant to make you feel less important. You've always thought Rachel needed more support, I finished for him. Maybe that was true when we were children, but I'm turning 30 tomorrow and you still treat me like my feelings matter less than hers. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We're proud of you too, Emma. We've always been proud of how independent and capable you are. That's just it, Mom. You're proud that I don't need you, that I never cause problems or make demands. You love my absence more than my presence. Rachel pushed back from the table abruptly. This is ridiculous. You disappear to Boston, barely keep in touch, hide your entire life from us, and then blame us for not knowing about it. Maybe if you had shared something real about yourself over the past decade, we would know you better. Her words contained enough truth to give me pause. Had I withdrawn so completely that I had made it impossible for my family to know who I had become? You're right, I acknowledged, surprising her. I did stop sharing, but that doesn't change the fact that you canceled my birthday celebration without a second thought. That pattern has been consistent throughout my life. My father stood up, his face troubled. I think we all need some time to process this. Emma, I'm sorry about tomorrow night. We should have found another way to handle the wedding expenses. My mother wiped her eyes. Maybe we can still call Antonelli's, see if they have any tables available. The suggestion, while well-intentioned, felt too little too late. I think I need some space, I said, standing up. I'm going to get a hotel room for tonight. Don't be silly, my mother protested. Your room is ready upstairs. I need to think, Mom. And make some work calls, I added, feeling safer with the professional excuse than the emotional truth. Rachel crossed her arms. Running away again. Some things never change. Her words hit harder than she probably intended. Was I running away? Perhaps, but staying felt impossible with decades of hurt suddenly exposed and raw. I'll call you tomorrow, I said, gathering my purse and phone. We can talk more then. As I walked toward the door, my father followed me. Emma, he said quietly. I'm sorry. Not just about dinner, about everything. I nodded, unable to trust my voice, then walked out to my rental car and finally allowed the tears to fall. The Millbrook Inn had only recently been renovated, and their suite felt luxurious by small-town standards, though modest compared to the accommodations I had grown accustomed to in my business travels. After checking in, I sat on the edge of the king-sized bed and called Marcus. I am so sorry, he began immediately. I completely misunderstood your family situation. When you mentioned going home for your birthday, I assumed they knew about Phoenix Solutions. It's not your fault, I assured him. Actually, maybe it was time they found out. There is no Goldman Sachs acquisition offer, he confessed. I made that up when I realized my mistake. I thought it might help salvage the situation. Despite everything, I laughed. Well, your improvisation skills are impressive. Now my family thinks I'm fielding offers from major investment banks. Aren't you, though? Marcus asked. That inquiry from the European consortium last month was essentially the same thing. He was right, I realized. My two worlds had been separate for so long that I had stopped seeing the connections. After updating Marcus on the family drama and assuring him I would return to Boston on Monday, I ordered room service and tried to sort through my emotions. The hurt was still there. A lifetime of feeling secondary didn't disappear in one conversation. But underneath it was something else. Relief, perhaps. The exhausting charade was finally over. I slept better than expected and woke to several text messages. My mother had written, "Please come home for breakfast. We need to talk properly." Rachel's message was shorter. "I'm sorry about last night, mostly." My father, uncomfortable with technology, had simply texted, "Please call." Instead of responding immediately, I ordered room service and spent the morning catching up on work emails. Around 11, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, my father stood there looking uncertain and older than his years. "May I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside, noticing how he surveyed the suite with widened eyes. "Nice place," he commented, "though I suppose you're used to better." "It's perfectly comfortable," I said, gesturing for him to sit in one of the chairs by the window. "How did you know where to find me?" "Small town," he reminded me with a slight smile. "Plus, there aren't many options in Millbrook." We sat in awkward silence for a moment before he spoke again. "Emma, I owe you several apologies. I've been thinking all night about what you said about how differently we've treated you and Rachel. You're absolutely right. Dad, you don't have to..." He held up his hand. "Please let me say this. I've been trying to understand how we got here, how we failed you so completely. He leaned forward, his hands clasped together. When you were little, you were this remarkably self-sufficient child. You walked early, talked early, figured things out independently. You rarely cried or demanded attention. Then Rachel came along, and she was the opposite. High maintenance, emotional, always needing intervention. He smiled sadly at the memory. We fell into a pattern of giving Rachel more attention because she seemed to need it more urgently. You were so capable, so mature, we started taking your strength for granted. Being self-sufficient wasn't always a choice, I said quietly. He nodded, his expression pained. I realize that now. We trained you to expect less from us, then praised you for needing less. It became a terrible cycle. We talked for over an hour, unpacking years of misunderstandings and unmet needs. He told me how Rachel's outgoing personality had always felt more familiar to him, while my analytical mind reminded him of his own distant father. I shared how I had interpreted their focus on Rachel as evidence that I was somehow less worthy of attention and celebration. I was proud of you, he insisted, his voice thick with emotion. I've always been proud. But I realize now I rarely told you that. I just assumed you knew. I needed to hear it sometimes, I admitted. You should have heard it every day, he said firmly. What you've accomplished, Emma, building a company from nothing, employing nearly 100 people, creating technology that helps other businesses succeed, it's extraordinary. As our conversation wound down, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Please come home. I made blueberry pancakes. I showed my father the message, and he smiled. She's been cooking since dawn. Stress baking, she calls it. The kitchen looks like a bakery exploded. I should talk to her too, I acknowledged. He nodded. And Rachel. She's struggling with all this in her own way. My mother was waiting on the front porch when we arrived, her eyes red-rimmed from crying and lack of sleep. When she saw me, she hurried forward and embraced me with desperate intensity. I'm so sorry, she whispered against my hair. I've been such a terrible mother. You're not terrible, Mom, I said, holding her tight. You're human. Inside. Over perfectly prepared blueberry pancakes, she offered her own perspective on our family dynamics. I always saw you as the strong one, she explained, her hands trembling slightly as she poured coffee. The one who could handle anything life threw at you. Rachel needed so much guidance, so much reassurance. You seemed so sure of yourself, so capable. I was pretending most of the time, I admitted. I learned early that showing vulnerability didn't get me very far in this family. My mother's face crumpled. Emma, I never wanted you to feel that way. Our conversation was interrupted by Rachel's arrival. She entered quietly, her usual confidence replaced by something more uncertain. Gone were the designer workout clothes, replaced by simple jeans and a sweater that made her look younger, more vulnerable. Hey, she said, hovering in the doorway. Can we talk? My parents discreetly retreated to the backyard, leaving us alone. In the kitchen, where we had shared so many childhood moments, Rachel sat across from me, uncharacteristically fidgeting with her coffee mug. So, she began hesitantly, you're basically a tech mogul. I smiled slightly. I wouldn't go that far. According to everything I read online last night, you should, she countered. I spent hours looking you up. Awards, interviews, featured articles. Why didn't you ever tell me any of this? I considered the question carefully. Partly because no one ever asked in a way that felt genuine. Partly because I was afraid. Afraid of what? That it wouldn't matter. That even knowing I had built something significant, you would all still see me as boring, reliable Emma. The afterthought. Rachel winced. That's not how I see you. Isn't it? Yesterday you called me the birthday girl, but did you actually remember? It was my birthday before Mom mentioned the canceled dinner? Her silence was answer enough. Look, I continued more gently. I'm not blameless here. I withdrew. I kept secrets. I built walls between my life here and my life in Boston. But can you understand why? Rachel nodded slowly. I think so. And I'm sorry about the birthday dinner. I should have insisted they keep the reservation, or at least suggested we postpone part of the wedding expenses. It's not about the dinner, I said. It's about the pattern. About always being the one expected to understand, to accommodate, to need less. I never thought about it that way, she admitted. I guess I just assumed that was our dynamic. You were the successful one with everything figured out, and I was the one who needed more help. Maybe we've both been playing roles assigned to us a long time ago, I suggested. Maybe we both need to see each other more clearly. Rachel reached across the table for my hand. I'd like that. And Emma, I've always been proud to be your sister, even when I was too self-absorbed to show it properly. That afternoon, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. Instead of leaving early as planned, I suggested we all go out for dinner. Not to make up for my canceled birthday, but to start over as adults who were finally seeing each other clearly. We went to Antonelli's after all, not because it was expensive, but because it was where our family could sit together and have the conversations we should have been having for years. Over wine and pasta, we talked more honestly than we had in decades. My mother asked detailed questions about Phoenix Solutions. My father wanted to understand the technology behind our software platforms. Even Rachel showed genuine interest in my work life, asking about the challenges of managing employees and scaling a business. We should visit Boston, my mother suggested over dessert. See your office, your home, really understand your life there. I'd love that, I said, meaning it completely. And speaking of visits, I added, looking directly at Rachel, what if I contributed to your honeymoon fund instead of letting you go into debt for Bali? Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Emma, you don't have to. I want to, I interrupted. Not because I feel obligated, but because I want to celebrate your happiness. Just like I hope you'll want to celebrate mine. 3 months after that transformative birthday weekend, I stood in the executive conference room at Phoenix Solutions, looking out at Boston Harbor while my family toured our offices. My father examined our server room with an engineer's appreciation for technical infrastructure. My mother chatted enthusiastically with our customer service team, asking about the educational programs we supported. Rachel shadowed Marcus, fascinated by the complexity of managing a CEO's schedule and the strategic decisions required to run a growing company. The visit was revelatory for all of us. Seeing me in my professional environment, confident, respected, clearly in command, had shifted something fundamental in how my family perceived me. I was no longer just capable Emma who would understand. I was Emma Reynolds, CEO and innovator, a woman who had built something meaningful through vision and determination. But more importantly, I was their daughter and sister, not perfect or invulnerable, but worthy of the same love and consideration they had always shown Rachel. Our relationship had evolved significantly over those months. My parents made conscious efforts to ask specific questions about my work and actually listen to the answers. They remembered details from previous conversations and followed up on projects I had mentioned. Our phone calls became longer, more balanced with genuine curiosity about my life replacing perfunctory check-ins. Rachel and I developed an adult friendship built on mutual respect rather than childhood roles. She had taken my suggestion about contributing to their honeymoon seriously, but in an unexpected way, she had started a small business creating custom yoga programs for busy professionals, inspired partly by watching how my employees managed work-life balance. I want to build something of my own, she explained during one of our weekly phone calls, not because I have to prove anything, but because I want to contribute something meaningful. The wedding, when it finally took place, was beautiful, but more intimate than originally planned. Rachel had made the decision to scale back the expensive elements, choosing to invest the savings in her new business instead. I realized I was planning a wedding to impress other people, she told me, as we got our hair done together the morning of the ceremony. But what really matters is Derek and me starting our life together. The rest is just window dressing. I was honored to serve as her maid of honor, giving a speech that celebrated not just her marriage, but her growth as a person. For the first time in our lives, our roles felt balanced. 2 women supporting each other rather than competing for limited family resources. My parents, too, had evolved in unexpected ways. My father began volunteering as a mentor for young entrepreneurs through a local small business development center. My mother started a financial literacy program at the community center, using skills she had developed managing our household budget to help other families plan for major expenses, like education and weddings. As for me, I was learning that success wasn't just about what I had built professionally. The real achievement was this: sitting around my parents' dinner table 6 months after that painful birthday, watching my family engage with me as a complete person rather than a role they had assigned me decades ago. "I have an announcement," I said as we finished my mother's famous apple pie. "Phoenix Solutions is opening a satellite office in Albany. I'll be spending more time in New York, maybe getting a place closer to home." The joy on their faces was unmistakable and genuine. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," my mother said, reaching for my hand. "We've missed having you close." "Plus," Rachel added with a grin, "Derek and I will need an experienced businesswoman's advice when we expand my yoga business." My father raised his coffee cup in a toast. "To Emma," he said, his voice warm with pride and affection. "Not just for this news, but for having the courage to demand the love and recognition you always deserved." As our cups clinked together in the familiar kitchen of my childhood, I felt a profound sense of completion. The path to healing hadn't been straight or simple. There had been difficult conversations, hurt feelings, and moments when it seemed easier to maintain the old patterns than build something new. But we had all chosen to do the work. My parents had confronted their biases and blind spots. Rachel had examined her assumptions about our family roles. I had learned to advocate for my own needs while also taking responsibility for the walls I had built. The most profound change, though, was internal. I no longer needed their validation to know my own worth, which paradoxically made their love and recognition even more meaningful when it came. On my 31st birthday, a milestone we celebrated with the elaborate dinner at Antonelli's that had been promised but not delivered the year before, I looked around at my family's faces and realized that the greatest success wasn't measured in revenue or employees or industry recognition. It was this: being fully known and loved by the people who mattered most, not for what I had accomplished or provided, but simply for who I was. The journey of rebuilding family relationships is never completely finished. We still had moments of falling into old patterns, conversations that grew tense when sensitive topics arose. But we were all committed to something better than what we had before: a family dynamic based on mutual respect, genuine interest, and equal consideration for everyone's needs and dreams. Sometimes the most painful confrontations lead to the most beautiful reconciliations. What had started with a canceled birthday dinner and an unexpected phone call had become something I never thought possible: a second chance at family. Not perfect, not without its ongoing challenges, but real and worth fighting for. Have you ever had to demand the recognition you deserved from your own family? How did they react when they finally understood who you really were? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button for more stories about family dynamics, personal growth, and finding your true worth. Remember, sometimes the people who love us most need to learn how to see us clearly. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and may you find the courage to be fully known in your own life.